Hi, I'm Paul Denniston. I created Grief Yoga with the mission to blend many different forms of yoga and movement to help honor loss, to allow ourselves to move through sadness, anger, to release tension and anxiety, finding powerful ways to discharge negative thoughts and feelings to open our lives up to more peace and love and happiness. Over the years, I've taught this practice to over 5,000 therapists, counselors, and healthcare professionals. And sometimes I'll hear people say like, Greek yogurt, you teach Greek yogurt? No, it's grief yoga. But sometimes they'll also ask me like, what brought you into this practice? I grew up in Texas. Yoga is not big in Texas, nor are men having feelings. And so I was taught at a very early age to not deal with grief and loss. They would say, don't just cry, go and do something about it. And so that's what I did. I basically avoided grief and loss for the first couple of decades of my life. I come from a very religious background. My father, he's a minister. My mother is a Christian school teacher. And so there was also a feeling of perhaps a spiritual bypass to not really deal with any negative thoughts or feelings. If you're feeling sad, don't really express it, go and pray. Or if you're feeling angry, then just avoid it or go and do something. And so I wasn't really taught how to handle these challenging negative emotions. So as I grew up, not really dealing with any sadness or anger, what I would realize within my family is I would see my father, he would bottle up his anger to where at times it would explode and it would scare the family, it would scare me, it would scare him. And so that was how I learned how to do the anger. I actually did the same thing. I just bottled it up until I was bullied as a kid. And then it just kind of bottled up, and then all of a sudden I broke out into a fight. I hurt another person just because I didn't know how to channel it in a healthy way. I didn't know how to release it. My mother, when she would experience her sadness, she didn't feel comfortable about it, and so basically she would isolate herself. She didn't want to express it to her kids, and so she felt like the way to heal the sadness is to go into a place of prayer and to not really express it. And so for me, as I would deal with the sadness or the anger, I just felt like I needed to isolate. I didn't need to show this to anybody because these were not healthy emotions. And so what would happen is I became isolated. I didn't have friends, and I had a lot of suppressed feelings. So I would exercise and I would go to the gym, and I got a little bored with lifting weights, and so I had heard of yoga, and I was like, let me maybe try an exercise program that might have a spiritual connection to it. And so as I started and went to a yoga class, because there's a balance within yoga, it's about, you're doing the postures, but there's also a place of being, because there's such a focus on breath. They call it a moving meditation. And so all of that unresolved sadness and anger that I had been running away from for the first couple of decades of my life, it all caught up to me on that tiny little space of a yoga mat. And I just had to sit with the negative thinking that was going on in my mind, how I was judging myself, how I was judging everybody around me, recognizing how I couldn't stay present. I was so focused on what I was going to be doing later, or I was focusing on, ways that I was angry about things from the past. And the heart of what yoga is about is it's a compassionate practice on being present. I had this emotional release that happened within the class, and afterwards, as we came into a place of surrender, it brought me this peace that I had not really felt. And I was like, wow, there's something really powerful in this. I need to go deeper. And so as I became a teacher, I feel like you teach what you need to learn. And so I became a teacher, and one of the things that I loved about yoga was the place of creating intentions. You know, what's your intention for being in class today? What's your intention? What's your focus? As a teacher, I thought, you know, what if I created an entire practice with the intention of healing and processing grief? Because I feel like in our society, we don't really know how to be with it, with other people, within ourselves. And I really started to recognize how much I was holding on in my body. And I thought, what if I created a body ritual practice that helped honor grief and anger and allowed us to find ways to reconnect to our empowerment. So I began studying from some of the top leaders in grief and loss: David Kessler, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, Peter Levine, William Worden, and I wanted to also study from the top leaders in yoga: Sean Korn, Gurmukh, and learning all of these different branches of yoga and finding intentions behind each of the exercises to honor grief and loss. The reason that I feel like yoga is such a perfect space to help heal and process grief is because when we don't allow ourselves to feel feelings fully, they get stuck in the body. The body remembers. We carry issues in our tissues, and they need to get released. Grief is coming from a place of loss, separation, disconnection from someone or something that we love. Yoga means union, creating harmony within the mind and body to lift the spirit, finding union, connection. So when I became a teacher, my mom and dad were a bit apprehensive. They were like, "Paul, yoga is a religion. You should not be doing this practice." And so I just want to clarify here, yoga is not a religion, but since the intention is to bring harmony within mind and body to lift the spirit, whatever your faith and belief is, you're welcome to bring it in. I mean, if you want to treat it as a place of body prayer, prayer to God, to Jesus, to universe, creative consciousness, whatever that faith and belief is, bring it in. I mean, my mom, being the Christian school teacher, when I told her, "Mom, if you want to pray to Jesus the entire time, that's okay." And she's like, "Oh, well, I can do that." So just so you know, whatever that belief is, bring it in. I teach this practice to all different types of groups. I teach it to bereavement groups, cancer support centers, people who are dealing with loved ones with Alzheimer's, people are dealing with addiction. And sometimes I'll have a little apprehension like, "Oh, I can't do yoga, I'm not flexible enough." And the intention behind this practice is actually for emotional liberation. Sometimes people are like, "Yeah, I can't be flexible like that." It's not about getting yourself into like a physical pretzel, because I know that we have limitations. We've got injuries that we're dealing with. And so it's really about opening the channels up. It's about allowing the emotional liberation to happen. So you know your body better than I do. So if there's ever any physical pain or discomfort, I want you to just pull back and rest. But if there's an emotional struggle, I want you to move forward with a sense of inquiry and what can I release and let go of here. Thank you for joining me on this little adventure. And my hope is that it actually will open your heart and reconnect to the love that is there. So let's begin our journey.